Why was she still here, mopping the same floor where men half her age learned to shoot? No one asked that question out loud. No one cared enough to. Inside the Navy firing range, the air was thick with gunpowder and arrogance. The smell of cordite clung to the walls, mixing with bleach and floor cleaner. Sunlight spilled through the tall windows, breaking into hard angles across the polished concrete. Each beam cut through the haze like a judgment. And in the far corner, the janitor moved, silent, precise, invisible. Ren Talovich, 58 years old. Thin as a wire, her movements measured to the millimeter. Her mop swayed like a metronome, slow, steady, controlled. The kind of rhythm you only learned when your life once depended on it. To the young SEAL candidates, she was nothing but part of the scenery, a ghost of routine in a place that worshipped noise and action. Only Commander Riker Blackwood noticed her sometimes, and even then, only the way a man notices an object that never moves. He sipped his coffee, eyes on the recruits. None of them knew he'd served in real wars. None of them knew the woman cleaning the floor had too. The door clanged open. The swagger came in first. 8 men fresh from selection, confident, unbroken, already legends in their own minds. At their head, Chief Petty Officer Thaddeus Evercraftoft, Thod, as his teammates called him, square-jawed, loud, good-looking in the kind of way that got people killed when they thought charm was armor. "Gentlemen," Commander Blackwood's voice echoed across the hall, "range is hot in 5. Today's precision exercise determines leadership assignments. Best marksman takes command privileges." The candidates nodded, a ripple of adrenaline moving through the room. Ren didn't look up. She'd heard it all before. They unpacked their rifles like they were unwrapping trophies, stainless steel gleaming under the lights. Thod led the banter, firing jokes as easily as bullets. "Breathe steady, shoot straight, make your mama proud," he called out. Laughter followed, loud and careless. Ren's mop kept moving. The sound of wet fibers dragging over concrete was the only soft thing in the room. When Thod caught her glancing briefly at one of the M4 rifles, his grin sharpened. "You'll scratch the barrel, sweetheart," he said, loud enough for the room to hear. "These aren't your household cleaning tools." The laughter that followed was a reflex, thoughtless, automatic. Ren didn't react. Her gray eyes stayed on the floor, her expression unreadable. Only the faintest pause, one heartbeat, gave her away. Then the mop kept gliding. Commander Blackwood's jaw flexed, but he said nothing. The silence after the laughter felt heavier than any reprimand. The range went hot. Rounds snapped down range, brass casings clattering like rain. Thod's grouping was perfect, tight, precise, cocky. He stood behind the line like a man born to dominate it. Next to him, Callum Marsh adjusted his stance, quiet, deliberate, the kind of man who cared about getting it right more than getting noticed. Ren moved between them without disrupting the rhythm, her cart squeaking faintly over the echo of gunfire. Nobody asked her to wait. Nobody asked her anything at all. She collected spent shells near the benches, her fingers brushing the edge of a sniper rifle's barrel, an older M4A6 variant. Her gaze lingered just half a second too long. A small detail only someone like Thod would notice. "You thinking about trading that mop for a rifle?" he said. "Careful, sweetheart, you'll scratch the barrel." This time even Callum smiled awkwardly. It was easier to go along. Ren said nothing, just shifted her bucket slightly and moved away. If anyone had been close enough, they might have seen the faintest tremor in her jawline, not of anger but restraint. By the end of the session, Thod's scores topped every chart. Blackwood made notes on his clipboard, voice neutral. Evercraftoft, lead position for next phase, dismissed. The men began to pack up. Talk of liberty, bar nights, and girlfriends filled the air again. Ren finished mopping the firing line. She waited until the last echo faded, until the heavy doors shut behind them. Then she stopped. For the first time all morning, the silence was complete. From her pocket she pulled a small, faded photograph. 4 women in desert fatigue stood shoulder to shoulder against a horizon of endless sand. The photo's edges were worn, its colors bleached by time. One woman in the photo, her younger self, wore the same eyes she still carried now. Cold, steady, haunted. They'd been called Ghost Echo. A unit that didn't exist. Officially, anyway. The sound of footsteps made her tuck the picture away. Commander Blackwood lingered by the door, coffee now cold in his hand. "You handled yourself well, Ms. Talovich," he said quietly. "Just doing my job, Commander." He studied her face as if trying to place her in some half-remembered file. "You seemed interested in the shooting." "Just wondering how long before I have to replace those targets," she replied, her tone dry. "Supply forms take forever." A faint smile flickered in Blackwood's eyes, but he let it go. Carry on. When he left, Wren stood alone again. Her reflection stared back at her from the polished floor. For a long moment she just looked at herself. The mop, the coveralls, the name patch frayed at the edges. A disguise that had lasted 20 years. But some masks grow heavy. 2 weeks later, the air on the range was tenser. Final qualifications. Thodd's swagger had grown. Callum's confidence had cracked. His rifle jammed again, 3rd time that morning. Frustration burned behind his calm face. Thodd's voice cut through the echo. "Feed mechanism marsh or operator error." Callum cleared the malfunction, jaw tight. "Equipment issue, sir." "Or maybe you just need tougher hands," Thodd said, smiling for the audience. The laughter came again, nervous, deferential. Wren was cleaning near the observation booth. She saw Thodd's fingers linger on Callum's weapon a little too long, pressing somewhere he shouldn't, the motion subtle but deliberate. Her mop paused mid-stroke. Her eyes narrowed. Commander Blackwood noticed. Their eyes met across the range. She gave a slight shake of her head, barely perceptible. He frowned, jotting something on his clipboard. Later that afternoon, while cleaning the locker room, Wren overheard them, voices carrying over the tile and steam. Thodd and 2 of his followers. "Quarter turn on the windage," Thodd said. "Barely noticeable, makes him doubt himself. I'm doing him a favor, weed out the weak before the real field does." The others chuckled, admiration wrapped in cowardice. Wren kept her mop moving, heartbeat steady. She didn't need notes or evidence. She'd seen this pattern before, arrogance feeding on insecurity. And she'd learned long ago, arrogance always ends up looking down the wrong scope. That night, Commander Blackwood found her in the hall outside the armory. He waited until the corridor was empty. "You were Desert Storm, weren't you?" he asked quietly. Wren didn't flinch. "I cleaned bases during that time." "That's not what I meant." His voice softened. "I pulled your personnel file. Half of it's blacked out. 20 years of service with more redactions than records. I've never seen that on a janitor's profile." She leaned on her mop handle. "Perhaps there's nothing worth recording." "Or perhaps there's too much," he said. Silence filled the corridor. The hum of fluorescent lights sounded like a distant drone. "There were rumors," Blackwood continued. "A program, women snipers, operatives, Ghost Echo. No official trail, no recognition, just whispers." Wren met his gaze at last. Her eyes were flat, unreadable. "Rumors are common in the military, Commander." "Most are," he agreed, "but not all." He studied her, waiting for a confession that never came. Finally, she said, "You should check the equipment storage tonight." Blackwood frowned. "Why?" "Because sabotage doesn't fix itself." Then she walked away. The next morning, Callum's rifle fired perfectly, smooth, precise. His aim steadied. Confidence returned. Wren mopped in silence as the targets exploded downrange. She didn't look up once, but every shot Callum made landed dead center. Thod's expression tightened, his perfect control beginning to crack. That afternoon in the mess hall, Callum found her eating alone. "Mind if I sit?" Wren gestured with a shrug. "I wanted to thank you," he said. "Someone reported the tampering. My rifle was checked overnight. I know it was you." "I report maintenance issues when I see them," she replied evenly. "Part of the job." He smiled faintly. "My grandmother served in Desert Storm. Adeline Marrow, ever heard of her?" Wren's fork paused halfway to her mouth. The name hung there ghost-like. "Many faces from those days," she said finally. "Most are best forgotten." "Not hers," Callum said. "She always said the real heroes were the ones no one ever knew about." Wren looked up. For the first time her eyes softened. She was right. He reached into his pocket and slid something across the table, a small coin, silver, with an eye inside a crosshair. No words, no unit name. "She left me this," he said. "Said it belonged to someone called the Watchers, people who made sure everyone else got home safe." Wren didn't touch it, but her breathing changed. Her voice, when it came, was almost a whisper. "You should keep it close." Before she could say more, the loudspeaker crackled, calling all SEAL candidates back to training. Callum stood, gathering his tray. "Thanks for the conversation, ma'am." When he walked away, she exhaled, a slow release she hadn't known she'd been holding. The coin still glinted under the fluorescent lights. An old symbol, long buried. Ghost Echo's emblem. She stood, her half-eaten meal forgotten, and moved back to her cart. The mop waited, patient as always. Wren picked it up, her face returning to calm neutrality. But inside, the ghost had begun to stir. Sometimes strength doesn't roar. It just keeps sweeping the same floor until the moment comes to act. Why did arrogance always mistake silence for weakness? Thod Evercraftoff didn't sleep well that night. He told himself it was the caffeine, the stress, the upcoming qualifications, but deep down, something else had cracked. A janitor had made him doubt himself. And for men like Thod, doubt was poison. By dawn, he was already back at the range, running diagnostics on his rifle like a man performing surgery. The sun hadn't yet burned through the fog rolling in from the Pacific. The base slept quietly under its gray blanket, except for the metallic rhythm of bolts sliding and triggers testing in the distance. Wren was there too, mopping the same floor she always did, every movement precise. If she noticed him, she gave no sign. Thod's eyes flicked toward her more than once, unable to shake the image of her calm stare the day before, that moment when she'd looked at him and said nothing, yet made him feel as if she'd seen right through him. He hated it. By mid-morning, the rest of the candidates arrived, followed by Commander Blackwood, coffee in one hand, clipboard in the other. The air filled quickly with the sharp clicks of rifle bolts, the muted chatter of soldiers too tired to fake confidence. "Gentlemen," Blackwood said, "final week before evaluation. Your scores this week determine assignments. Treat every shot like a live op." "Yes, sir," the men replied in unison. Thod's "yes, sir" was louder than the rest. Wren kept to the edge of the room, sweeping brass shells into a bucket. Invisible again, or pretending to be. That afternoon, during a break, Callum caught Wren's eye across the range. He gave a slight nod of gratitude, subtle, respectful. She didn't return it, but the corner of her mouth softened, almost imperceptibly. She'd been invisible for so long that even quiet acknowledgement felt like sunlight through storm clouds. But Thod noticed, and resentment began to coil. Later that day, Wren was restocking supplies when she heard boots behind her. "Funny," Thod said, leaning against the doorway. "I've noticed you take special interest in Marsh lately, helping him clean his rifle too." Wren didn't look up. "I clean floors, Chief, not weapons." "Maybe that's for the best. Some tools are better left to professionals." His smirk carried the easy cruelty of men who'd never been humbled properly. She straightened, mop handle still in hand, meeting his gaze directly. "Some tools," she said quietly, "only work in steady hands." For a heartbeat, neither moved. Something unspoken passed between them, an instinctive recognition. The kind predators feel when they realize another predator is watching. Thod blinked first. He gave a short, forced laugh and stepped back. "Just friendly advice, sweetheart. Don't mistake proximity for inclusion." Wren returned to her work without another word. But when he left, her reflection in the metal locker behind her showed a faint tremor of emotion, not fear, not anger. Memory. Some ghosts never stayed buried. That evening in his office, Commander Blackwood stared at the personnel file again. Talovich. Renata E. The paper trail was barely a shadow. Half the pages redacted, the rest filled with inconsistencies. Born in what was once Yugoslavia, emigrated in the late 80s, joined U.S. Navy Support Corps, 1991. Then 20 years of silence. He flipped another page. A single line stood out near the bottom. Reassigned internal transfer classified, 1992. Blackwood exhaled, his gut whispering what logic couldn't prove. There was something about her. Something too clean, too contained. When he looked up, she was outside his glass office window, mopping as always, her reflection framed by light, movements smooth and disciplined. He wondered how many people had ever really seen her. The morning of the pre-qualification trials arrived with crisp blue skis and nerves stretched thin. Admiral Preston himself appeared for observation, tall, silver-haired, eyes sharp enough to cut through pretense. His presence transformed the air. Every movement in the range became sharper, every breath measured. "Proceed," Preston ordered. His tone carried the weight of decades. Thod shot first, each round snapping with mechanical perfection. His rhythm was flawless: exhale, fire, inhale, fire. The observers murmured approval. Then came Callum. His hands were steady but his confidence fragile. On his third shot, the round veered right, barely visible to most eyes, but Wren noticed. And so did Thod. "Little off there, Marsh," Thod said, voice carrying. "You might want to check your scope before you embarrass yourself." Laughter rippled. Commander Blackwood said nothing, but his pen tapped the clipboard once, twice, sharp and deliberate. Wren's mop slowed. Her gaze lifted toward Callum's rifle. Something about the scope alignment was wrong, microscopic but wrong. Blackwood caught her look. A silent exchange again. He frowned, wrote something else down. By the time the exercise ended, Thod was still the favorite, but something had shifted. Even the Admiral seemed to sense it, the tension under the surface, like a live wire. That night the base was nearly empty when Wren walked the long hallway toward the equipment bay. She moved without sound, her mop cart rolling softly behind her. She paused outside the armory door. Unlocked. Her instincts, dulled but not dead, whispered caution. She entered anyway. Rows of rifles lined the racks, shadows stretching long under the overhead light. She walked past them slowly, eyes sharp, fingers brushing faint dust trails, markings of recent interference. Then she saw it, Callum's rifle. The adjustment ring had fresh fingerprints. Thod's. Wren adjusted it back precisely 1/4 turn. Her hands didn't tremble. She'd done this before, not in a janitor's uniform, but in a ghillie suit with a 1,000-yard scope, and a heart trained not to beat too loud. When she finished, she wiped the prints, closed the weapon case, and left the armory exactly as she'd found it. But before she reached the door, she froze. A reflection glimmered faintly on the glass window, someone watching. She turned slow and calm. Commander Blackwood stood in the doorway, arms folded. For a long moment, neither spoke. "Checking inventory?" he asked finally. Wren's reply was quiet, maintaining equipment integrity. He studied her face. "You know what you're doing, don't you?" Her eyes didn't waver. I know what happens when people cut corners. He nodded slowly. I think you should be at the range tomorrow morning. I always am. I mean, he said, voice dropping at the line, not behind it. Wren said nothing, but something in her eyes, a flicker of reluctant understanding, told him she'd heard. The next morning broke bright and loud. Officers, evaluators, and technicians crowded the observation platform. Even Admiral Preston seemed unusually alert. Thod smirked his way to the firing line, adjusting his gloves like a showman. Callum, quiet as ever, took the position beside him. Wren moved about her duties near the back, unnoticed, until Blackwood called out. Miss Talovich, he said, hold position near the line today. We may need assistance with safety checks. Every head turned. Even Thod, what's she gonna do, mop the bullets? Carry on, Blackwood said sharply. Let's begin. The first few rounds went perfectly. Then came Callum's turn, the rifle that had once betrayed him. He adjusted the scope, inhaled, fired. Dead center. Again. And again. A murmur of surprise rippled through the observers. Thod's smile faltered. Then came the long-range precision test. Targets at 800 yards. The challenge that separated sharpshooters from marksmen. Callum's scope flickered under sunlight. He frowned. Sir, something's wrong with my reticle, the lens. Equipment failure again, Thod interrupted, voice loud enough to sting. Maybe cleaning lady can fix it. The laughter that followed was uncomfortable, forced. Blackwood's jaw tightened. Before he could respond, Wren stepped forward. Sir, she said quietly, if I may. Preston turned, eyebrows raised. Blackwood gave a subtle nod. Wren approached the rifle, her movements precise, professional. She didn't ask permission. She simply examined the lens under the light, adjusted a dial, and spoke. There's a hairline crack in the forward glass. Equipment fatigue. It would deflect light, distort the reticle at distance. Thod scoffed. With respect, Commander, I don't think the janitor's qualified to diagnose weapon optics. No one laughed this time. Blackwood took the rifle, checked, and nodded slowly. She's right. Preston's gaze sharpened. Then we postpone the test, replace the equipment. No need, Thod cut in. We've all used the same model. If it's good enough for me, it's good enough for him. He lifted his own rifle and offered it toward Wren, a mocking gesture that dared her to take it. Go ahead, sweetheart, show us how it's done. A stillness filled the range. Even the air seemed to hesitate. Wren looked at the weapon, then at him. Her voice came low. I wouldn't want to scratch the barrel. The words hit harder than any bullet. Thod froze. Preston looked from one to the other, curiosity igniting in his eyes. Blackwood, after a pause, said quietly, Actually, Chief Evercraftoft, I think that's a fine idea. Miss Talovich, demonstrate proper technique. Wren set down her mop. The metal bucket rattled softly as it rolled to a stop. She stepped to the line, took the rifle, and the world seemed to change temperature. Her stance shifted, body aligning in ways muscle memory remembered before her mind did. Shoulders square, elbows in, breathing shallow, controlled. She adjusted the scope with a flick of her wrist, minimal, exact. For the first time in years, the weight of a rifle settled into her hands, not as a burden, but as an extension. Range hot, Blackwood said quietly. Wren inhaled once, exhaled slowly, and fired. The sound was soft, measured, final. The target, 800 yards away, shuddered. Through the spotting scope, Blackwood confirmed it, a perfect dead-center strike, splitting Thod's previous bullseye clean in half. Silence swallowed the range. Wren safed the weapon, handed it back, and spoke softly. Proper breathing prevents lateral drift. You're anticipating recoil, Chief. That's why you pull right. Her voice was calm, instructional, but her eyes carried the quiet authority of someone who'd taught entire units how to survive. Admiral Preston stepped forward slowly, his expression unreadable. "I don't believe we've been properly introduced," he said. "No, sir," Wren replied. "Ghost Echo," Preston said, not as a question. "Yugoslavia, 1992. Wren didn't answer. She didn't need to. The entire range stood motionless. Even thawed, the arrogance, the smirk gone, replaced by something else. Recognition. And maybe respect. Later that night, as the range lights dimmed, Wren sat alone on the same bench where Thod had once laughed at her. The mop bucket was gone, replaced by silence and the faint hum of ventilation. She looked down at her hands. The faint tremor had returned, not from weakness, but from memory, the weight of 20 years spent pretending not to exist. In the reflection of the window, she barely recognized herself. Commander Blackwood's voice came softly from behind her. "You could have embarrassed him worse." Wren smiled faintly. He embarrassed himself. Blackwood chuckled under his breath. "Admiral Preston was right, Ghost Echo. I read the report after you left. Classified, redacted, legendary." "Legends are just unfinished stories," she said quietly. "The truth is rarely so kind." He studied her profile, the deep lines of time etched into it. "Why hide here, Wren?" She took a long breath. "Because ghosts need somewhere quiet to fade." Blackwood nodded slowly, understanding more than she expected. "Maybe it's not time to fade yet." Wren didn't answer. Her eyes drifted to the far end of the range, the place her bullet had landed earlier that day. 800 yards away, a perfect hole still marked the center of the target. The line between past and present had vanished with that shot. And somewhere deep inside, she knew this was only the beginning. Sometimes silence isn't surrender. It's aim, waiting for the moment that matters most. How long can a secret survive before it starts whispering its own name? That question hung in the silence long after Wren Talovich's shot shattered the range. Even hours later, people still spoke about it in low voices. The janitor who split a perfect bullseye. The woman who moved like she'd been born with a rifle in her hands. Rumors spread faster than truth ever could. By evening, her story had already traveled through the barracks, across the mess hall, and into the officers' lounge. Every version was different: sniper, operative, covert trainer. But all agreed on one thing: she wasn't who they thought she was. Wren didn't notice, or maybe she didn't care. After 20 years of silence, rumors were easier to face than memories. She spent the night in her quarters, a small, windowless maintenance room tucked behind the supply bay. Her belongings fit in one locker. Her world fit in a box: a faded photograph, a service medal without a name, and a folded letter she'd never mailed. The air was thick with silence, the kind that made you hear your own heartbeat. She ran her thumb over the photo: 4 women, a desert horizon, the faint outline of sniper rifles slung over their shoulders. Ghost Echo, before anyone knew what that meant. Back when she still believed duty and truth were the same thing. A knock broke the stillness, sharp, deliberate. "Come in," she said. Commander Blackwood entered first, followed by Admiral Preston. The Admiral's presence filled the small room. He didn't need rank to command attention. His history did that for him. "Chief Petty Officer Talovich," Preston said, using her full title now. Wren looked up, slow and steady. "That rank hasn't been used in 20 years, sir." "Then maybe it's time it was again." He gestured to the chair across from her bunk. "May I?" Wren nodded. Blackwood closed the door behind them. For a moment no one spoke. The hum of the air vent was the only sound. Preston studied her face the way a man studies a battlefield, searching for patterns, weaknesses, old scars. "I should have recognized you," he said finally. "We all should have. You were Echo 4. Wren didn't flinch, but her voice carried steel. Those records are sealed until 2040. They were, Preston said quietly, until last year. The Pentagon reopened the Ghost Echo files. Internal review. Someone in D.C. decided it was time to correct a few oversights. Oversights, she repeated, the word tasting like rust. That's what they're calling it now. Blackwood shifted uneasily. Preston held her gaze. You were recommended for the Silver Star 3 times, Chief. None of it made it past the politics. You know how it was then. Wren's jaw tightened. I know how it still is. Silence settled again, heavy, loaded with what they both remembered but wouldn't say. Finally, Preston reached into his uniform pocket and produced a small metal case. He opened it slowly, revealing a dull, weathered metal inside. This was authorized last year. You earned it decades ago. Wren didn't move. And what do you want in return, Admiral? His expression didn't change. Your insight, your experience. We're building a new specialized training division, precision, reconnaissance, covert adaptability. The skills Ghost Echo pioneered. The skills the Navy finally admits it needs again. Wren leaned back, eyes narrowing. You mean the skills you buried? Times change, Preston replied softly. We adapt or we disappear. She gave a bitter smile. That's what they said before Stillwater. The Admiral's eyes flickered just for a moment. That name still had power. Stillwater was complicated, he said. It was a betrayal, she corrected, and you know it. Blackwood shifted again, his eyes darting between them. He didn't know the details, not yet, but he could feel the weight of whatever ghost had entered the room. Preston exhaled, voice low. You were never supposed to be part of that mission, Chief. None of you were. Orders came from above. Joint tasking, off-the-books authorization. You know how quickly things went wrong. I know what they told us, Wren said, and I know who paid the price. Her tone wasn't angry, it was worse. It was calm. The kind of calm that comes when anger runs out of room to live. For a long moment, no one spoke. Finally, Preston stood. I didn't come here to argue. I came to offer you a chance not to fix the past, but to shape what comes next. Wren's gaze lifted. And if I say no? Then you keep mopping floors until the ghosts fade, Preston said quietly. But something tells me you're not finished yet. He placed the medal on her bunk and left without another word. Blackwood hesitated, then followed, his expression unreadable. When the door shut, Wren stared at the medal. Silver Star. No name engraved. Her reflection warped in its dull surface, the way truth always warps when seen too late. By morning, the base had changed. Subtle things, salutes from enlisted personnel who hadn't acknowledged her before, curious glances from officers pretending not to stare. Word had spread. The janitor wasn't a janitor anymore. But Wren still wore the same faded coveralls. Let them wonder. She'd worn anonymity longer than any uniform. At breakfast, Callum approached her again, tray in hand. Chief Talovich, he said respectfully. She looked up from her coffee. You don't need to call me that. With respect, ma'am, he said, I think I do. He sat across from her. The mess hall buzzed with quiet conversation, but their corner felt like its own world. They said you were Ghost Echo, he began cautiously. That true? She met his eyes, unflinching. What do you think? I think it explains a lot, he said. The way you move, the way you notice things others don't. He hesitated, then added softly, My grandmother would have liked you. Wren smiled faintly. Adeline Marrow liked anyone who didn't waste words. She always said there were 2 kinds of soldiers, Callum continued. The ones who talk about what they did and the ones who never have to. Wren's gaze softened. She was a smart woman. She left me this, he said, showing her the coin again. You said it was important. Wren reached out this time, took the coin carefully between her fingers the way someone might hold a relic. This wasn't official issue, she said. It was personal, custom made after our first operation. He frowned. Then why do I have it? Because your grandmother was one of the few who knew what we were doing, and who we were doing it for. Ren turned the coin over, tracing the engraved coordinates on the back. Kuwait, Operation Zephyr Base. We pulled intel that saved 300 coalition soldiers. She was our supply liaison, efficient, brave. Callum nodded slowly. She said once that the people who changed the world the most were the ones no one remembered. Ren placed the coin back in his hand. Then she understood everything that mattered. Later that afternoon, Commander Blackwood summoned Ren to his office. The blinds were drawn. The air smelled of coffee and tension. Preston was there again, along with a third man, civilian clothes, military posture, expensive watch. Chief Talovich, the stranger said, extending a hand. Mr. Harrington, Department of Defense Liaison for Special Programs. Ren didn't shake it. Special programs, she repeated, her tone flat. That's one way to describe us. Harrington smiled politely. The department is reopening several classified initiatives, one of which involves adaptive training methodologies. Your name came up. How flattering, she said dryly. Did my mop performance impress someone? Your operational record did, Harrington replied smoothly. And your discretion. Both are rare commodities. Ren crossed her arms. What exactly are you asking? Harrington exchanged a look with Preston. We're forming a new covert training wing, not official SEAL pipeline parallel, focused on advanced precision operations, psychological endurance, and covert ethics. We want you involved. Ren raised an eyebrow. Ethics. Every era has its shadows, Harrington said. We're trying to ensure this one learns from them. She studied him, nodding the careful phrasing, the polished manipulation. And if I refuse? He shrugged lightly. Then someone else writes the manual, probably someone less qualified. Preston's voice softened. Ren, we need this. You know how fragile the line is between control and chaos. We can't afford to train soldiers who only know how to shoot. They need to know when not to. Ren looked from one man to the other, then to Blackwood. What do you think, Commander? Blackwood hesitated. I think you've been hiding long enough. The words landed like a small detonation. Quiet, devastating, true. She exhaled. I'll think about it. That's all we ask, Preston said. He stood, offered a nod of respect. You've carried enough weight alone, Chief. Let us take some of it now. When they left, the room felt heavier than before. Ren stared at the empty space they'd occupied, the faint scent of old secrets lingering in the air. Then she noticed the folder Harrington had left on the desk. Its corner was stamped Confidential, Operation Revival. Inside was a single sheet of paper. At the top, Subject, Ghost Echo Reinstatement Proposal. At the bottom, Primary Candidate Talovich Renata E. She closed the folder slowly, her fingers pressing against the embossed seal as though it could stop time. Some ghosts, she realized, don't fade because they're meant to return. That night the Pacific wind howled outside her quarters, rattling the thin walls. Ren sat on her bunk, the metal still untouched beside her. She turned off the light and sat in darkness, the memories flooding in uninvited. Sandstorms over Kuwait. Breathing through a broken scope. A voice in her ear, Echo 4, target confirmed. And the silence that followed a perfect shot. Every mission, every elimination, every erased name. All in the service of an idea she once believed in. Justice, honor, the quiet dignity of doing what others couldn't. But Stillwater had changed that. Stillwater had shown her that even perfect shots could serve the wrong truth. A soft knock came at the door. Come, she said automatically. Blackwood stepped in, holding 2 cups of coffee. I figured you don't sleep much either, he said. She accepted the cup with a nod. Habit, she said, hard to unlearn. He leaned against the wall. The Admiral wants to formalize your reinstatement. You'll have rank privileges again. I never cared about rank. I know, he said quietly, but the younger ones need to see what real strength looks like. She looked up. And what's that supposed to look like, Commander? He smiled faintly, like a woman who knows how to shoot the truth straighter than a bullet. For the first time in days, she almost laughed. Almost. Blackwood started to leave, then paused at the door. Wren, when you fired that shot today, it wasn't just a demonstration. It was a message. Was it? She asked. Yeah, he said. That ghosts don't disappear. They just wait for permission to breathe again. When he left, she stared at the closed door for a long moment. Then she whispered to the empty room. Maybe it's time. Outside, the waves pounded against the California shore. Each crash sounded like a memory resurfacing. Sometimes, redemption doesn't come from rewriting history. It comes from facing the part of it that refused to die. What happens when the silence you built to protect yourself starts talking back? The orders came 2 days later, sealed in a manila envelope stamped classified, Level 7. Wren didn't need to open it to know what it meant. Once again, she was being pulled into the machinery she'd spent decades escaping. But ghosts don't get to choose their hauntings. She sat in the range office that morning, sunlight slanting through the blinds like thin bars. The medal Preston had given her rested on the desk beside the unopened envelope. It glimmered faintly, not like an honor but like a mirror. Every reflection looked like a question she didn't want to answer. Commander Blackwood stood near the window, hands in his pockets. They're activating the program, he said. You're reinstated as an advisor, not combat personnel. Wren smiled without warmth. Advisors don't get classified envelopes. He hesitated, then said, There's a briefing at 900. Preston's leading it. They're pulling you in as subject matter consultant for the prototype teams. Ghost Echo 2? She asked, voice soft. He nodded. Different name, same idea. Wren's eyes drifted toward the envelope. Ideas have consequences. Blackwood's expression softened. So does silence. The briefing room smelled of burnt coffee and recycled air. Screens flickered with satellite images and unit designations. The faces around the table were a mix of officers, intelligence analysts, and a few civilians in government suits pretending they understood the cost of the words they used. Admiral Preston opened the meeting with the measured tone of someone who'd spent a lifetime hiding truth behind decorum. Ladies and gentlemen, as of this morning, the Department of Defense has authorized preliminary operations under Project Stillwater Reconstruction. Wren froze. The words hit harder than gunfire. Stillwater. She thought she'd misheard. But then the slides confirmed it, a map, Southeast Europe. The same coordinates from 20 years ago. Her voice came low, sharp. You said Stillwater was shut down, contained. Preston met her gaze evenly. That's what we all believed, but the site been reactivated. Satellite imaging shows activity in the old sector, movement, signals traffic, possibly reoccupied by unknown forces. We need intel. Quietly. Wren's knuckles whitened on the table. Unknown forces. That's what they said the first time, and you remember how that turned out. The room went silent. Of course they remembered. Even those who didn't know the details had heard the echoes of it. An operation that had never officially existed, one that had left every name on the roster except hers crossed out in red. Preston's voice softened. We're not asking you to relive it, Wren. We're asking for your expertise. Her eyes narrowed. You're asking for absolution. He didn't argue, didn't have to. The silence said everything. That night Wren walked the range alone. The floodlights hummed softly, casting long shadows across the empty lanes. She could almost hear the ghosts again, the laughter of her old team, the crack of distant gunfire, the voice in her headset that used to calm her nerves. Echo 4 confirmed visual. Echo 1 confirmed. That voice belonged to Maya. She hadn't said Maya's name out loud in 20 years. Wren sat on the firing bench and closed her eyes. The air was cold, metallic. For a long time she didn't move. Then her phone buzzed, unknown number. She ignored it. It buzzed again. This time a message. You shouldn't have fired that shot, Wren. Her breath caught. No name. No number. Just that sentence. She read it again and again. The past, it seemed, wasn't done with her. The next day she went to see Preston. He was in his office, the blinds half drawn, a file open in front of him. Who else knows about Stillwater? She demanded. He looked up surprised. What do you mean? I mean someone's contacting me. Someone who shouldn't have access to that word. Preston frowned. You're sure it wasn't a prank? Her voice sharpened. No one pranks about Stillwater. He leaned back. We're investigating possible leaks. The files were digitalized last month. Cyber Command's monitoring data flow. But if someone's reaching out to you... They're not reaching out, Wren said quietly. They're warning me. Preston's jaw tightened. You think it's internal? I think ghosts rarely haunt strangers, she said. By mid-afternoon, the Navy's secure database pinged a trace. The message originated from an encrypted relay in Bosnia, a signal masking protocol used only by defunct reconnaissance units. Wren stared at the screen. That's Echo Protocol, she said. Only 5 people ever used that encryption. Preston glanced at her, and 4 are dead. Her voice dropped to a whisper, not all. That evening, Wren found herself driving through the outskirts of San Diego, the sea glinting through gaps in the cliffs. Her destination was a small, forgotten cafe near the airfield, the kind of place where secrets could hide in plain sight. She sat by the window, watching the light fade, when a woman's reflection appeared behind her. Still drink it black. Wren turned slowly. Maya stood there, older, thinner, her once dark hair streaked with gray. Her eyes, though, hadn't changed. Still that same calm intelligence, the kind that could see 10 moves ahead of everyone else. Wren's voice came out soft. I thought you were dead. Maya gave a faint smile. That makes 2 of us. They sat across from each other, the silence between them heavy and fragile. Finally, Wren said, You sent the message. Maya nodded. You shouldn't have fired that shot. Wren's jaw clenched. You were watching. I've always been watching, Maya said. They never stopped using the program, Wren. They just changed its name. Wren stared at her. Project Stillwater Reconstruction. Maya leaned closer. They're not reconstructing anything. They're covering up what we found. Wren frowned. What we found? We were sent to extract intel from an abandoned outpost. That's what they told us, Maya interrupted. But the outpost wasn't abandoned. It was a field test. They were experimenting on captured civilians. You remember the cold rooms, the bodies. Wren's breath hitched. She hadn't let herself think about that in years, the white corridors, the steel tables, the sound of chains instead of machines. They said it was bioweapon containment, Wren whispered. They lied, Maya said. Stillwater was a control project. They wanted to test psychological endurance under sensory isolation. You remember the briefings, prolonged silence exposure, false memory induction. Wren nodded slowly. And when we found it, we weren't supposed to. They ordered a full wipe, Maya said. No witnesses, no record. Her voice cracked slightly, the first sign of emotion breaking through. You disobeyed. You refused to fire. Wren looked down. Her hands were shaking now. And you did. The words hung between them, sharp as glass. Maya's eyes shimmered. Orders, Wren. You know how it was. We didn't get to choose which side of the truth we lived on. And after, Wren asked, you disappeared. They made me disappear, Maya said. New identity, forced assignment under civilian contract. I've been watching them ever since. Stillwater's not dead, it's evolved. Ren exhaled, trembling. Why tell me now? Because they're bringing it back under your name, Maya said. You're listed as senior advisor on the new directive. They're using you as cover, legitimacy for something darker. Ren stared at her, disbelief giving way to fury. They wouldn't. They already have, Maya said. And if you step inside again, you'll be part of it. For a long moment, neither spoke. Only the hum of the cafe's refrigerator filled the silence. Finally, Ren said, then we end it. Maya leaned back, studying her face. You sound like you used to. I sound like someone who's tired of ghosts pretending to be saviors. Maya smiled sadly. Careful, sweetheart, you'll scratch the barrel. Ren's laugh was hollow, haunted. You still remember. Some things don't die, Maya said quietly. They just hide until you're ready to see them again. They walked together outside as night fell over the coastline. The sky was streaked with violet and amber, waves crashing like restless memories. Maya stopped by her car, glancing back. You'll be watched now. They don't trust you or me. Ren nodded. They never did. If we're going to stop this, Maya said, we'll need proof. The original Stillwater data core, it's still out there, hidden in the Balkan remnants. Ren looked toward the horizon. Then we find it. Maya hesitated. You sure you're ready to go back? Ren's voice came quiet, steady. I never really left. Later that night, Ren returned to her quarters. The metal still lay on the desk, gleaming faintly under the desk lamp. She picked it up, held it in her palm, and whispered, You wanted absolution, Admiral. You'll get the truth instead. She turned the metal over, scratched and worn, its reflection catching the edge of her eyes, not as pride but as warning. In the silence, her phone buzzed again. Another message. If you go back, don't trust anyone in uniform. She stared at the screen until it dimmed. Then she whispered to the empty room. I never do. The Pacific roared beyond the walls, the waves slamming against the rocks with a rhythm that matched her heartbeat, relentless, certain, alive. Somewhere across the ocean, the ghosts of Stillwater waited. And this time, she was going to meet them on her terms. Sometimes, the past doesn't come back to haunt you. It comes back to ask what you've learned from the silence. When you've lived long enough with ghosts, you stop fearing the dark. You start fearing what the light will reveal. Ren Talovich packed quietly that night. No uniform, no insignia, just neutral clothing, a small backpack, and an old field map she hadn't looked at in 20 years. Every fold of that map smelled like sand and regret. She paused by her desk, eyes landing on the medal. The one Admiral Preston had placed in her hand like a peace offering. It glinted faintly under the lamp, proud and hollow at the same time. She almost left it behind, almost. Then she slipped it into her pocket, not as a token of honor but as evidence. Outside, the wind carried the salt of the Pacific. The base lights shimmered in the distance, cold and sterile. She didn't look back. A familiar car waited at the edge of the access road, Maya behind the wheel. Her hair pulled back, jaw tight, eyes focused. When Ren climbed in, neither spoke for a while. Some silences said more than words ever could. You sure about this? Maya asked finally. Ren buckled her seatbelt. I stopped being sure 20 years ago, but I'm done being silent. The car rolled down the coastal highway, headlights slicing through fog. The ocean whispered against the cliffs, a soft applause for two women who should have been dead but refused to stay buried. They drove south for hours, avoiding major routes. Maya navigated like she was still on mission, eyes scanning mirrors, fingers tapping the dash rhythmically. Ren watched her. You kept the habits, she said quietly. Hard to forget the ones that kept you alive, Maya replied. The first stop was a safe house near the border, a rundown building hidden between a diner and a defunct repair shop. Maya parked behind it, killed the engine, and led Ren inside. The interior smelled of old dust and machine oil, but it was secure. On the table sat a laptop, a satellite phone, and an encrypted drive the size of a matchbox. "This is what I salvaged from Stillwater before they shut it down," Maya said. "Fragmented data, partial images, and one set of coordinates. Eastern Bosnia near Banja Luka. That's where they moved the mainframe." Ren examined the screen, and the people running it. Maya hesitated. Some are dead, some are retired, but at least one name keeps reappearing: Director Ulrich Dane. Ren frowned. Dane's CIA oversight. He approved the original Ghost Echo funding. "Exactly," Maya said. "Which means he's trying to rewrite history by controlling the record. If we find that mainframe, we expose the truth." Ren leaned back. "You know what happens when people expose the truth, Maya." "Yes," Maya said softly. "They become the story." By morning, they were in the air, a chartered cargo flight with no manifest trail. Maya had arranged everything through old contacts, the kind who didn't ask questions as long as you paid in silence. Ren sat by the window, staring at the rising dawn over the Atlantic. The horizon looked like it was on fire. She thought about Blackwood, the only man who'd ever looked at her like she was more than a file. She hadn't told him where she was going. It was safer that way. Maya's voice broke the quiet. "You know, I used to dream about this, finishing what we started." Ren smiled faintly. "And how did it end in the dream?" Maya's eyes softened. "We made it home." Ren looked back out the window. "Then it wasn't a real dream." They landed in Sarajevo under false identities, humanitarian consultants on archival recovery. The air smelled of rain and diesel, the city a strange mix of scars and rebirth. Ren watched the people moving through the streets, civilians who had rebuilt their lives on the same soil where soldiers had once erased them. "Do you ever wonder if we made anything better?" she asked. Maya adjusted her coat. "We kept things from getting worse, that's something." Ren didn't answer. Some truths were too heavy to hold with words. Their destination lay north, the ruins of an old NATO field base, overgrown with vines and silence. The map led them through backroads, through forests where the past still lingered in rusted tank tracks and half-buried signs. When they reached the perimeter fence, Ren stopped. "This is it." Maya scanned the area with a handheld device. Thermal reads minimal, probably automated security only. Ren exhaled, her breath misting in the cold air. "Funny, I used to think machines made things cleaner." "Do they?" "No," Ren said, "they just forget faster." They cut through the fence and moved quietly toward the bunker entrance. Moss covered the concrete walls, the door rusted but intact. Maya entered a manual override code. The keypad beeped weakly, then clicked open. The air inside was stale, damp, heavy with memory. Ren switched on a flashlight. The beam illuminated rows of empty consoles, dust-covered monitors, and cables coiled like snakes. It looked abandoned but not forgotten. At the far end, a single light blinked. Maya froze. "That's active hardware." They approached slowly. The blinking came from a black unit bolted into the wall, compact, secure, humming faintly. Ren crouched, mainframe still alive. Maya nodded, then Dane's still watching. Ren glanced at her. "So let's make sure he sees what he buried." They connected the portable decryptor Maya had brought. Code flooded the screen, encrypted logs, video fragments, personnel data. One file caught Ren's eye. Stillwater Personnel Echo Records MP4. She opened it. Static, then grainy footage appeared, a room lined with glass panels. Inside, civilians sat strapped to chairs, electrodes fixed to their temples. The sound was faint, whispering, sobbing, the echo of human endurance breaking. Ren's face went pale. "They said containment, not control." Maya swallowed hard. "They lied to all of us." Another frame appeared, her younger self, rifle slung over her shoulder, standing beside Maya in desert fatigues. The caption read, Operative E4 Precision Test Subject Lead. Ren's voice trembled. They didn't just use them, they used us. Maya touched her shoulder gently. We can still stop them. Ren shook her head. Stop what, Maya? The past, it's already written. Then we rewrite it, Maya said. The bass trembled suddenly, a low rumble, power surge. Maya's eyes widened. They know we're here. Ren yanked the drive free. How? The mainframe was remote-linked. The moment we accessed it, we triggered a trace. Outside, headlights flared through the tree-lined black SUVs, multiple. Engines roared closer. Ren grabbed Maya's arm. We're moving now. They bolted through the side exit, sprinting toward the ridge. The air filled with shouting, foreign accents, radios crackling. Ren led the way, cutting through brush, heart hammering in rhythm with the distant gunfire starting behind them. At the ridge's edge, Maya stopped, panting. They'll box us in. Ren scanned the horizon, an old drainage tunnel below. There. They slid down the slope, mud and rock tearing at their boots. The tunnel was narrow, half-collapsed, but it offered cover. They crawled inside just as the first vehicles reached the bunker. Flashlights sliced through the dark above them. Voices, orders, then silence. Maya pressed her back against the cold wall, breathing hard. What now? Ren looked at the drive in her hand, still glowing faintly. Now we find someone who will believe the truth. And who's that? Maya asked. Ren hesitated, then Blackwood. 2 days later, back in the U.S., Commander Blackwood received an unmarked package. Inside, a flash drive, a folded map, and a single note written in tight, deliberate handwriting. If they tell you we're missing, believe the opposite. R. He didn't report it, not yet. He just stared at the map, the coordinates circled in red. Something in his chest tightened. He knew what this meant and who was behind it. Meanwhile, in a quiet safe house outside Dubrovnik, Ren and Maya watched the decrypted footage play again and again. Each frame was a confession. Each sound, a sin resurfacing. Ren's eyes stayed fixed on the screen. They built this on lies, and we helped. Maya's voice was steady but soft. We didn't know. That doesn't change what it cost. Maya turned toward her, then make it cost them back. Ren looked at her, at the woman who had once been her teammate, her anchor, her ghost. For the first time since Stillwater, she felt something fragile flicker back to life. Purpose. They'll come for us, Ren said. They already are, Maya replied. Ren nodded slowly. Then let's give them something worth coming for. That night, under dim lamplight, they recorded a statement. Not for the military, not for command, for the world. Maya's voice was calm as she read from the file. Operation Stillwater was never a containment mission. It was human experimentation disguised as defense research. Civilians, soldiers, and operatives were subjected to prolonged deprivation tests without consent. I was there. We both were. Ren spoke next, her voice low, deliberate. They erased the records, buried the names, but memory doesn't die, it hides, and sometimes it waits for the right silence to break. She ended the recording with a line that felt like a prayer. Dignity doesn't speak, it acts. When the file finished uploading through an encrypted channel, they sat in silence, listening to the faint hum of the generator. Maya finally whispered, "We just declared war on ghosts." Ren looked at her, "Then let's make them visible." Outside, the wind picked up. A storm rolled in over the Adriatic, waves crashing against the rocks. Lightning flashed through the window, illuminating Ren's face, calm, weathered, resolute. The drive lay on the table beside the metal, 2 artifacts from 2 lifetimes, one built on lies, the other on silence. She touched both, closing her eyes briefly. When she opened them again, her expression had changed. Some wars end with surrender. Others begin with remembrance. And for Ren Talovich, Ghost Echo wasn't finished. It was finally coming home. Sometimes truth doesn't roar. It whispers and waits for someone brave enough to listen. What happens when the truth you fought to reveal becomes the reason they hunt you? By dawn, the world had changed. Wren didn't see it firsthand, she felt it. The air itself seemed to shift, heavy with the pulse of something unstoppable. Across networks and news feeds, the Stillwater leak had gone live. A 15-minute file, 2 voices. No faces. Just facts. Operation Stillwater was never a containment mission. Those words were now everywhere, whispered in military forums, replayed on encrypted channels, mirrored by journalists who didn't yet realize what they were touching. The silence was broken, and the world, for the first time, was listening. Wren sat by the window of the safe house, watching the horizon dissolve into gray. Maya paced behind her, restless energy bleeding through the walls. "They'll come fast," Maya said. "We don't have long before the trace completes." Wren didn't answer. Her eyes were on the medal lying on the table, the same one Admiral Preston had given her. It looked different now, like evidence. "They'll call us traitors," she murmured. "They called us heroes once," Maya said, "and that didn't stop them from erasing us." Wren nodded slowly. Truth doesn't change their appetite, only the menu. Maya stopped packing, her voice softening. "You think we did the wrong thing?" Wren turned, meeting her gaze. "We did the only thing." Thousands of miles away, in his office at Coronado Base, Commander Blackwood stood motionless before his screen. The video played on loop, Wren's voice echoing through the speakers like a ghost confessing for both of them. He knew that tone, the control, the calm defiance, the unflinching clarity. Wren wasn't running anymore. She was leading. The door burst open. Admiral Preston entered, eyes cold, jaw set. "You've seen it." Blackwood nodded. "Everyone's seen it." Preston tossed a file onto the desk. "We've been compromised. The secretary's calling it an information breach tied to foreign interference." "Foreign interference," Blackwood repeated, incredulous. "She told the truth." Preston's glare sharpened. "You don't know that." Blackwood stepped forward. "I know her, and I know she doesn't talk unless she's right." Preston's voice hardened. "You're under orders to locate and contain both Talovich and Marrow, effective immediately." Blackwood stared at him. "Contain. Do I need to spell it out?" Silence stretched between them, thick as gunpowder. Finally, Preston said quietly, "Don't make me question your loyalty, Commander." Blackwood's jaw clenched. "I already am." In Dubrovnik, Wren and Maya moved like shadows. The city was alive with tourists, but to them every face looked like surveillance, every sound a warning. They changed locations twice in one day, switching SIM cards, ditching their gear. The footage was out now. Their mission wasn't to hide anymore. It was to survive long enough to make it matter. At a small harbor cafe, Maya set down a folded newspaper. Wren glanced at the headline. "Stillwater, Navy program or war crime." Her chest tightened. They twisted it already. "That's what they do," Maya said. "They turn truth into speculation until it suffocates." Wren's voice dropped to a whisper. "We should have stayed dead." Maya's eyes softened. "You say that like you didn't mean to come back." Wren looked away. "I didn't." That night, Blackwood sat alone in the range office, the same place where Wren had once mopped the floor while others ignored her. He replayed every moment since she'd arrived, every silence that now meant something else. He opened the package she'd sent, the flash drive she'd smuggled from Bosnia. Inside were the raw files, video, documentation, operational logs, enough to end careers or governments. His phone buzzed. "Unknown number," he answered. "Blackwood," a voice said, faint, distorted. "Wren." "Don't trace this," she said. "We don't have time." "Where are you?" "Alive," she said, "for now." "Wren, you need to come in, there." I'm not running, she interrupted. I'm finishing. Blackwood rubbed his temples. You don't understand. Preston's mobilized internal recovery. You and Marrow are officially off the books. If they find you, there won't be a trial. Wren's tone didn't waver. Then they'll find a grave, but not silence. Let me help you. You already are, she said softly. Just hold the line, keep the truth from disappearing again. Wren. Blackwood, she whispered, remember what you said. Some ghosts just need permission to breathe. The line went dead. By morning, the backlash had begun. The Department of Defense denied everything. Congress demanded hearings. And somewhere in D.C., Director Ulrich Dane drafted his counterstrike. To the world, Stillwater became a mystery wrapped in bureaucracy. To Dane, it was a threat to control. He ordered an immediate asset retrieval, Black Ops clearance, unacknowledged. Target Talovich Renata, Marrow Maya. Status expendable. In a rented room overlooking the coast, Wren and Maya reviewed what little time they had left. The drive contained enough proof to expose the truth publicly, but they needed a secure route to leak the original archives. We can't trust government channels, Maya said. Even Interpol's compromised. Wren studied the drive. Then we go private. Who? Callum, she said. He's still inside, but he's clean. Maya frowned. He's a soldier, Wren. You'll put a target on his back. Wren's voice softened. He already has one, he just doesn't know it yet. She opened the laptop, initiated a coded transfer. Once he receives the data, it auto-replicates across 5 servers. If we're gone, the truth survives. Maya watched her in silence. You always were better at endings, she said quietly. Wren's smile was sad. No one's good at them. We just stop pretending they don't come. That evening, as storm clouds rolled over the Adriatic, a black convoy approached the city. Inside the lead vehicle, a man in tactical gear checked his orders, terminate on sight. The ghosts had been found. Wren was the first to hear them. Engines, tires on wet pavement, boots hitting the ground in formation. They're here, she whispered. Maya grabbed the drive, slid it into her jacket. Then we move. They slipped out the back door into the narrow alleyways, the rain falling in sheets. The city lights blurred into streaks. Sirens began to echo in the distance, not police, private. Corporate security with federal clearance. Maya turned down a side street. We won't make the docks. Wren stopped, scanning their surroundings. A bell tower loomed above, higher ground. They climbed the narrow stairs 2 at a time, hearts pounding, rainwater dripping from their coats. Below them, boots stormed through puddles, voices shouting commands in clipped English. When they reached the top, the view opened the sea black and wild. Lightning flared across it like veins. Maya leaned against the wall, breath heavy. You ever think we'd end up back here? Wren's eyes searched the horizon. I think we never really left. A shadow moved below, a soldier aiming upward. Wren ducked as a round cracked the stone beside her head. Maya returned fire, controlled, professional. 2 shots, 2 bodies fell. 5 more, Maya said. Wren checked her magazine. 4 bullets. They both laughed short, bitter. The kind of laugh that only soldiers share when they know the odds are already gone. Blackwood's phone rang at that exact moment. Unknown signal. A video feed, live. He clicked at Wren's face, rain-soaked calm. The signal was weak, glitching. Blackwood, she said, voice low but steady. They found us. Wren, listen, hold position, I can. No time, she cut in. The upload's complete. If we go down, the truth doesn't. Where's your location? She smiled faintly. You already know. Then the feed flickered, gunfire, shouting, a flash of lightning across her face. And gone. Blackwood stood frozen, the screen black in his hand. For the first time in his career, he didn't know what to do with orders. Back in the bell tower, smoke filled the air. The sound of rain mixed with gunfire. Maya was hit shoulder, grazing wound, but enough to slow her. Wren dragged her behind the bell's massive bronze shell, pressing her hand over the wound. "Stay with me." Maya gritted her teeth. "Always." Wren's eyes flicked to the stairwell, voices getting closer. "You have the drive." Maya nodded. "In my jacket." Wren took it, tucking it into her own vest. "If one of us gets out." "Don't," Maya said firmly. "We both get out or neither." Wren smiled faintly. "Still giving orders, huh?" "Still ignoring them." For a brief moment they both laughed again, and in that laughter time folded. They were young again, in desert uniforms, alive with conviction and purpose. Then reality returned with the sound of footsteps. Wren stood, rifle raised, breathing slow. She counted the shadows, 3, maybe 4. Not many, but enough. When the first silhouette appeared, she waited for the flash, then squeezed. 1 down. Maya fired next 2 rounds, another down. The rest hesitated, regrouped. Rain poured harder, wind howling through the tower slats like the ghosts of their old team cheering them on. Then silence. Wren held her breath. Footsteps again, slow, deliberate. A man stepped into view, tall, precise, unhurried. Director Ulrich Dane. "You've caused quite the spectacle," he said. His voice was smooth, detached. "You could have been remembered as heroes, now you'll just be deleted." Wren's grip tightened on the rifle. "We already were deleted, you're just late to the funeral." Dane smiled faintly. "You always had a sense of drama." He raised his weapon and stopped. Wren's rifle was already aimed. "Careful, sweetheart," she said quietly. "You'll scratch the barrel." Her shot came first. Perfect, center mass. Dane fell without ceremony. Behind her, Maya laughed weakly, still steady. Wren lowered her weapon slowly, still breathing. She crouched beside Maya, who was fatting fast. The blood soaked through her sleeve, but her eyes were calm. "Did we do it?" Maya asked softly. Wren took her hand. "We did something, the rest is up to the living." Maya smiled faintly. "Then that's enough." And just like that, the storm swallowed her. Hours later, the tower was empty, the soldiers gone, the city silent again. Blackwood arrived before sunrise, his uniform soaked, eyes hollow. He found her there, Wren, sitting beside Maya's body, drenched in rain, staring out toward the gray horizon. The medal lay in her lap. "You shouldn't have come," she said without turning. "I had to," he replied quietly. "They said you were dead." "Not yet." He knelt beside her. "You exposed them, Wren. Everyone's talking. They can't bury this." She looked at him finally, eyes clear but tired. "They'll try, but truth doesn't need to win. It just needs to exist." Blackwood swallowed hard. "What now?" Wren looked toward the sea. "Now I disappear again, for real this time." He reached for her hand. "You don't have to." She smiled faintly. "I know, that's why I will." She stood, placed the medal in his palm, and closed his fingers around it. "For the ones who still believe in orders that mean something." Then she walked toward the cliff, her figure fading into the mist. Blackwood stood there long after she was gone, the medal cold in his hand. He whispered the only words that felt right. "Sometimes dignity doesn't speak, it just acts." The waves answered for her, relentless, eternal, unbroken. Some stories don't end in victory. They end in truth, and that's enough to keep the silence honest. How do you live with a truth that finally escaped, but left you behind? The world called it the Stillwater leak. Governments called it disinformation. The Navy called it treason. But people called it something else, proof. For the first time, civilians saw the faces of those caught between orders and morality. The nameless, the erased, the invisible. And in every grainy image, in every classified document released, There was one name that kept surfacing like a ghost, refusing to stay buried. Renata Talovich. No rank, no title, no country. Just the whisper of a woman who dared to tell the truth. Commander Blackwood sat in a windowless conference room 3 days later. The air smelled of bureaucracy and quiet threat. Across the table sat Admiral Preston, his uniform immaculate, his face pale under the fluorescent light. "Commander," Preston said, voice measured, "you were in direct contact with Talovich prior to the leak. Is that correct?" Blackwood didn't answer. "Your silence will be noted," Preston said sharply. "Do you deny that she sent you classified information?" Blackwood leaned forward, elbows on the table. "She sent me evidence of a crime." "She sent you stolen intelligence." He met Preston's eyes. "You mean the kind she collected for the same people who buried it?" A muscle twitched in Preston's jaw. "This isn't about philosophy, Commander. It's about protocol." "No," Blackwood said quietly. "It's about conscience." Preston's expression hardened. "Be careful what hill you die on." Blackwood's tone didn't change. "Some hills are worth it." For a long moment, neither spoke. The tension in the room was a held breath. Finally, Preston closed the folder in front of him. "Effective immediately. You're relieved of duty pending review." Blackwood stood. "You can relieve me of rank. You can't relieve me of what I've seen." Preston didn't respond. He didn't need to. The silence was an order in itself. Outside the base, the California sky was cloudless, brutally indifferent. Blackwood walked along the shore until the base was just a memory behind him. The medal Wren had given him was still in his pocket, its edges worn smooth from his thumb tracing it over and over. He stopped by the water, staring at the horizon. Somewhere beyond it, she was still out there. He could feel it. He just didn't know if that was hope or punishment. Thousands of miles away, in a quiet mountain town on the Croatian border, Wren lived under a new name. She rented a small house above a shuttered bakery. No television, no phone, only the rhythm of rain on the roof and the occasional bark of distant dogs. She had become what she'd always been, invisible. At first it felt like safety, then it started to feel like penance. Every night she walked to the edge of the village, sat on a low stone wall and looked at the stars. The same sky she'd once navigated by scope, now full of ghosts. Maya's voice still lived in her head, steady, teasing, alive in memory. "Careful, sweetheart." The phrase that started it all. The joke that became a prophecy. Wren smiled at the thought, soft and tired. Weeks passed. The world moved on, as it always did. Stillwater became yesterday's scandal, a footnote in the endless churn of outrage. Investigations were launched, inquiries promised, names redacted again. But something had changed. Not everything could be buried this time. Somewhere online, a video compilation circulated, clips from the leaked footage intercut with news reports, voiceovers, and a single caption. She told the truth. It went viral, not because of politics but because of tone. Because her voice, calm, controlled, aching with conviction, sounded like every soldier who'd ever wanted to speak but didn't. Wren didn't know it yet, but she had become a symbol. And symbols live longer than survivors. One evening she went down to the town's small pier, where fishermen gathered after sunset. One of them, an old man with kind eyes and too much curiosity, handed her a small radio. "American station," he said in broken English. "Talking about your friend." Wren froze. "What friend?" He shrugged. "Lady soldier, they say she's hero and traitor both. Hard to know which." She turned the radio dial slowly. Static. Then her own voice faint through interference. "We didn't need medals. We needed mercy." Wren closed her eyes. Her own words echoed back like a prayer from another life. The old man chuckled softly. Strange world, sometimes truth louder when it whispered. She handed the radio back. Sometimes, she said, it's the only thing that still speaks. Across the ocean, Blackwood wasn't silent either. He'd been reassigned temporary leave, unofficial exile, but exile gave him time. Time to dig. With Wren's files as his guide, he began tracking names, former contractors, shadow financiers, the ones who profited from silence. What he found wasn't shocking anymore, just predictable. Stillwater hadn't ended. It had multiplied, new projects under new names, the same machinery, new ghosts. He compiled everything, encrypted it, sent it to independent journalists, anonymous leaks. And every file bore a single watermark, E4. It became an inside code among truth seekers, Echo 4. No one knew who she was, only that she'd refused to stay quiet. And through those whispers, Wren lived on, the janitor who cleaned more than floors, the soldier who never stopped fighting, even when no one could see her. In her quiet exile, Wren tried not to follow the news, but some things reached her anyway. A letter arrived one morning, no return address, military envelope, typed in Blackwood's clean, blunt font. They asked what loyalty meant. I told them it meant doing what's right when it hurts the most. The medal's still here, so is your story. Rest easy, Ghost, you did your part. R.B. Wren read it twice, then folded it neatly and set it beside the medal on her shelf. For the first time in years, she felt something gentle, not joy, not relief, but acceptance. The world didn't need her name anymore. It had her truth. That night a storm rolled over the mountains. Wind howled through the shutters, rattling her window panes. Wren sat at her table, candlelight flickering across her face. She opened a notebook, plain, unmarked, and began to write. Not a report. Not a confession. Just memory. She wrote about the early days in Ghost Echo, about the laughter, the fear, the long missions when the silence felt like a friend, about Maya, whose courage had been quieter than bullets, and about the young soldiers who'd mocked her on that firing range, not knowing they'd been standing in front of a living lesson. Her handwriting was slow but steady. We were taught to disappear, she wrote, but the truth always leaves a footprint, even when no one's looking. Outside, lightning flashed across the peaks. For a moment the light caught her reflection in the window, older now, lined with time, eyes still sharp. She smiled faintly. Even ghosts, she thought, deserved peace. Then she closed the notebook and blew out the candle. Darkness filled the room, not frightening, not empty, just honest. Days later, a stranger arrived in town, young, nervous American. He asked for her by the wrong name, the one she'd left behind. The baker pointed toward her house on the hill. She doesn't talk much, he said, but she listens. When the knock came that afternoon, Wren hesitated before answering. The young man stood there, rain dripping from his jacket. He looked barely 25. Ma'am, he said respectfully, I think you knew my grandmother, Adeline Marrow. Wren's breath caught. Callum. He nodded. You probably don't remember me, but I got your message. Wren's eyes softened. You made it out. I did, he said. Thanks to you. I got reassigned after the investigation. They told me to forget. I couldn't. He pulled something from his pocket, the small silver coin, the one Maya had given her. She said this was yours, he said, but I think it belongs with both of you. Wren took it slowly, her fingers trembling. The coin felt heavier now, filled with everything they'd lost and everything they'd managed to save. She believed in you, Wren said quietly. So do I. He smiled, the kind of smile only the next generation could afford. She believed in truth, he said. That's rare. Wren nodded, her eyes glistening. Keep it that way. He hesitated. They're still talking about you, you know. Some call you a hero. She gave a small, tired smile. Heroes are just mistakes that survived long enough to be misunderstood. Callum didn't argue, he just nodded. Then, after a quiet moment, he said, "I think Maya would have wanted me to find you." Wren looked past him, toward the mist rising over the hills. "She found me first." He left soon after, the rain easing to a soft drizzle. Wren stood by the door long after he was gone, the coin glinting in her hand. For the first time in decades, she didn't feel like a soldier or a janitor or a ghost. She just felt human. That night, she placed the coin beside the medal on the shelf, two symbols of two worlds that never agreed on what honor meant. Then she whispered, almost to herself, "Sometimes, surviving isn't the same as living, but it's enough to leave a light behind." Outside, the sky began to clear, the storm passed. And for the first time in years, Wren slept without dreams. Some battles are fought with bullets, others are fought with silence. The hardest are the ones you fight inside yourself and win by walking away. When the noise finally dies, what's left of a soldier who lived her life in silence? Months passed like whispers. Wren Talovich became another name that blurred into rumor, half believed, half forgotten. But sometimes, the postman still brought letters without return addresses. One from an old student who had seen her leaked testimony and changed her career. Another from a widow who wrote, "You gave my husband peace. He stopped asking if the mission was worth it." Wren read every word by lamplight, folded each page carefully, and stored them in a biscuit tin under the floorboards. Not trophies. Reminders. Outside her window, spring crept through the mountain valley. The war-scarred soil bloomed again, slow and stubborn like forgiveness. She tended a small garden now, potatoes, rosemary, a row of white poppies that refused to grow in straight lines. Each morning she spoke to them softly, the way she used to speak to her rifle before a mission. Calm, patient, almost affectionate. Control had a rhythm, so did healing. One morning, as she watered the plants, the village children passed by on their way to school. They waved shyly. She waved back. To them, she was just Ms. Wren, the quiet woman who fixed old radios and smelled of soil and coffee. None of them knew that her hands once guided bullets through wind like prayers through chaos. And that was exactly how she wanted it. In Washington, hearings continued. The word Stillwater echoed through the halls of power like an old song. No one wanted to claim writing. Careers ended, others thrived on the fallout. But under the noise, small things changed. Oversight committees formed, field protocols rewritten, human testing bans renewed. No one credited the leak directly. No one had to. Truth works best when it travels without a name. Blackwood followed it all from afar. He'd traded his uniform for civilian clothes, his rank for freedom. Sometimes he still dreamed of the range, the sound of her shot splitting the air, the silence afterward that felt almost holy. He'd wake with the same thought every time. She kept her aim, even when the world moved the target. He never tried to find her. He knew she didn't want to be found. But once a year, on the anniversary of the leak, he drove to the cliffs above Coronado, tossed a silver coin into the surf, and whispered the line she'd left him with. "Dignity doesn't speak, it acts." The ocean always answered with a wave. Wren learned of none of that. Her world had narrowed to small rituals, mending, writing, listening to the radio at dawn. She grown to love the voices she didn't know, the laughter of people living ordinary lives. Every broadcast was proof that the world kept spinning without orders, without gunfire. Sometimes she thought of Maya. Not the way she died, but the way she laughed that half-second after pulling off a perfect shot when she'd exhale and whisper, "Still breathing." Wren found herself saying it too, sometimes aloud, sometimes in memory. Still breathing. Still here. The seasons turned again. One late autumn evening, Wren climbed the hill behind her cottage. The air smelled of wood smoke and rain. She carried her notebook, the one filled with all she'd never told the world. At the top, she sat on the cold stone wall and looked at the valley lights flickering below. In the distance, church bells echoed slow, deliberate, like a heartbeat stretched across mountains. She opened the notebook and began reading from the last page she'd written. If anyone finds this, don't look for medals. Look for the quiet moments between decisions. That's where a soldier's worth really lives, in the pause before the shot, in the mercy you almost gave, in the truth you couldn't bury. She closed it, placed it beside her, and just listened to the wind, the river, the night. For the first time in her life, silence didn't feel like punishment. It felt like peace. Down in the village, Callum Marsh parked his truck outside the bakery. He carried a small parcel wrapped in brown paper. Inside, a new radio transmitter and a note that simply read, "For the static between stations." He left it at her door and walked away, not wanting thanks. When Wren found it later, she smiled. She connected the wires, adjusted the dials, and soon the room filled with the faint hum of distant frequencies. Voices drifted in and out, fishermen calling coordinates, a weather update from Naples, a lullaby in a language she didn't know. She sat by the window, tuning until the static softened into rhythm. It reminded her of the old firing range, the space between sound and silence, between precision and instinct. She leaned back, eyes half closed, letting the noise wash through her like forgiveness. Weeks turned to months. One night snow began to fall, gentle, unhurried. Wren stepped outside, her coat collar turned up, breath fogging in the cold. The valley was silent under the white. She looked up, and for a moment it felt like she was standing in the middle of a world finally clean. Her pulse slowed. Each heartbeat echoed the same word, enough. She went back inside, lit a candle, and opened the metal case one last time. The metal was tarnished now, its shine dulled to honesty. She set it beside the coin, placed both on the windowsill where the candlelight could find them. Then she wrote a single line on the first blank page of a new notebook. "Truth doesn't retire." She closed the cover and left it open on the table for morning. Somewhere far away, at a military museum in Virginia, a curator unpacked a box of declassified artifacts. Among the papers was an unmarked recording, audio only, female voice calm and steady. "If this reaches you," the voice said, "remember that silence was never our enemy. Only fear was. Speak carefully, aim truthfully, live kindly." The curator, not knowing who she was, labeled the file, "Unknown Operator, 1992-2019. He played it once more before placing it in the archives. In a quiet office nearby, Blackwood received an anonymous envelope. Inside, a single photograph, a snow-covered valley, a candle burning in a window. No words. But he knew. He smiled, whispered into the empty room. "Still breathing, huh?" Then he laughed softly, the kind of laugh that carries both grief and gratitude. Back in that small cottage, the candle burned low. Outside, the snow fell without hurry, erasing footprints, softening everything it touched. Wren sat in her chair, wrapped in a wool blanket, the faint hum of the radio filling the room. Her eyes were closed, her breathing even. The notebook lay open beside her hand, pen resting across the page. The wind moved gently through the cracks, turning the candle flame sideways, as if the world itself were leaning in to listen. And for a moment, just a moment, the static on the radio cleared. Maya's voice, faint, impossible, threaded through the air. "Echo 4, it said, target confirmed, you can stand down now." Wren smiled in her sleep, whispered something no one else would ever hear. And the candle went out. Morning came. The snow outside was smooth, untouched except for two small marks on the windowsill, one metal, one coin gleaming in the pale light. The villagers said she passed peacefully. They buried her at the edge of the field, overlooking the sea. No headstone, just a wooden plaque that read, RNATATLIVICH. Still breathing. The tide below kept its rhythm, the waves rolling in and out like old memories returning home. And though the world moved on, those who'd once heard her voice in that leaked file, in that trembling broadcast, never forgot the feeling it left behind. A steadiness, a courage too quiet to fade. Because in the end, the janitor, the sniper, the ghost, she hadn't vanished. She'd simply become what she always was. A watcher, a witness, a whisper in the space between truth and silence. Sometimes the loudest act of courage is leaving quietly after teaching the world how to listen.